On the morning of May 15, 1982, Lorraine Borowski walked to her office, expecting a slow, uneventful Saturday. But as she strolled through the nearly empty streets of Elmhurst, Illinois, she noticed a large red van trailing behind her. It crawled along at her pace, making her uneasy. Her anxiety grew as the van continued to follow. Clutching her keys tightly, she tried to stay calm. But when the van pulled up next to her and the jittery red-haired driver asked if she needed a ride, a shiver ran down her spine. Lorraine quickly refused and walked faster, hoping he would leave. He didn't. Moments later, the van's side door slid open and 3 men jumped out, surrounding her. They overpowered Lorraine, dragging her into the van. In an instant, they were gone, leaving only her shoes and keys on the pavement. The Ripper crew had just claimed another victim. Welcome to Cults Uncovered. This is the chilling story of Robin Gecht and his satanic cult who terrorized the streets of Chicago in the early 80s. Robin Gecht was born in November 1953 in Illinois. While much of his early life remains shrouded in mystery, it's evident he endured a troubled upbringing. Allegedly, he was expelled from his home and sent to live with his grandparents. It's rumored that he was forced to leave the family home because he his sister. During his teenage years, Robin became involved in Satanism, a trend that was gaining popularity among teenagers in the 60s and 70s. This era, known as the Satanic Panic, saw a surge in interest in the occult, spurred on by notorious events like the Charles Manson case and the release of paranormal movies such as The Exorcist, along with the rise of dark, heavy metal music. Dabbling in Satanism was a harmless phase, more about aesthetics and adolescent rebellion than actual violence for most teenagers of the time. But Robin was different. He became obsessed with demonic possession, secret rituals, and ancient human torture techniques, delving deeper into these subjects with each passing year. He made sure to keep his twisted obsession a secret. At 16, he dropped out of high school and started working as a carpenter and electrician. His employer was none other than the infamous John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer later dubbed the Killer Clown, who was arrested in 1978 after 26 bodies were discovered buried under his house. While there's no evidence linking Robin to Gacy's crimes, their association remains a chilling coincidence. When Robin was 19, he married Rosemary, a 16-year-old waitress, and they went on to have 3 children. To the outside world, Robin was a model family man, devoutly attending church every Sunday. However, beneath this facade, he led a sinister double life. While he presented himself as a God-fearing, devoted husband and father, he secretly indulged in satanic literature, rituals, and torture. Instead of converting their attic into a family space, he painted red and black crosses on the walls and created a shrine to Satan. His wife and children were completely unaware of Robin's dark interests and were strictly forbidden from entering the attic, the hidden epicenter of his twisted activities. It is believed that Robin's behavior became darker in the late 70s after the arrest of his former boss, John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer clown. A friend quoted Robin as saying, "The only mistake Gacy made was burying the bodies under his home." In 1980, Robin Gecht met Edward Spreitzer, a 19-year-old who had been in and out of trouble for theft and car stealing. Seeing potential in Eddie, Robin helped him secure construction jobs and even invited him to move in with his family. Eddie came from a troubled background, described by his mother as a shy, withdrawn child with no friends. Robin also took in 17-year-old Andrew Kokoralais, who worked with him from 1981 to 1982 and served as a live-in babysitter for Robin's children. Soon after meeting Andrew, Robin was introduced to Andrew's older brother, Tommy. Both Andrew and Tommy, along with Eddie, quickly became enamored with Robin. They admired his confidence and the semblance of success he projected with his business, wife, and family. Robin saw their admiration and eagerness to please as an opportunity. He decided to share his dark secrets with them, starting by revealing his attic, painted with red and black crosses and dubbed the Satanic Chapel. According to Thomas Kokoraleis, Robin claimed to be a Satanist and promised that by working together, they could harness the devil's powers. The young men were initially shocked by Robin's revelation, especially given how devoutly Catholic his wife, Rosemary, was. Yet, instead of being alarmed, they felt honored that Robin confided in them. The occultism craze of the 70s had lingered into the early 80s, and it wasn't unusual for someone to claim they were a Satanist. At first, they likely thought Robin's interest in the occult was just for thrills. However, Robin's fascination with Satanism was far more sinister, rooted not in spirituality, but in a desire to torture and kill. When he invited them to participate in his worship, the young men eagerly agreed, thinking it would be exciting. Robin slowly introduced them to Satanism, starting with readings from the Dark Bible. They held their meetings in the attic late at night after Robin had put his kids to bed and ensured his wife was away at work. He would preach from satanic texts, promising dark powers through demonic rituals. Unbeknownst to them, they were being groomed for far more nightmarish purposes. By 1981, 27-year-old carpenter Robin Gecht was leading a double life. Outwardly, he was an accomplished carpenter and a devoted husband and father to 3 children with his wife, Rosemary, a devout Catholic. In secret, however, he was the leader of a small satanic cult comprised of his young employees. Robin had already secured the unwavering loyalty of his followers. One night, the charismatic leader finally revealed to them that they were ready to elevate their devotion to Satan. The young men, excited at first, had spent months poring over satanic rituals together. The meetings were fun, but they sensed that Robin had something much bigger in mind. They never could have anticipated what came next. Robin told them it was time to begin hunting and women in the name of their dark overlord. The crew began driving around Chicago in a rust-colored utility van, searching for female victims for their satanic rituals. They built a partition in the van to prevent people from seeing into the back. Their first victim was Linda Sutton, a 26-year-old mother of 2 and sex worker. According to later testimony by Eddie Spreitzer and Andrew Kokoraleis, on May 23, 1981, she was dragged into the back of Robin's vehicle and handcuffed. Eddie was then ordered to sever Sutton's left breast while she was still conscious, which they would bring back to their chapel as tribute to the Dark One. Robin watched the assault with sadistic pleasure. Back at their satanic chapel, the group placed the severed flesh on Robin's profane altar. They knelt around it and masturbated while Robin read from satanic verses in the Dark Bible. Afterward, Robin cut the flesh into pieces and instructed his followers to eat it, saving the leftovers in a box stored in the attic. Police discovered more bodies with lacerations similar to Linda's, but they couldn't connect them to the Ripper crew. 2 victims they eventually connected were Lorraine Borowski and Shui Mack, who went missing in May 1982. Both were mutilated, with Shui's body found on September 30th, 1982, and Lorraine's on October 10th, 1982. The similarities led police to believe the murders were connected. On June 13, 1982, sex worker Angel York was picked up by the group. She was assaulted but survived, although she couldn't remember much. She did recall the attackers had a big red van. Her wounds were similar to another sex worker found a year earlier. In August, Sandra Delaware's body was found with her wrists tied and her left breast removed. A few weeks later, another mutilated woman's body was discovered. While the Ripper crew continued their killing spree, Robin maintained his construction job and attended church with his family. But by October 1982, Robin was becoming increasingly furious. Securing construction work was becoming difficult, and his financial future was in jeopardy. He could sense his followers were losing their stomach for murder, despite their fear of him. Despite their reluctance, the 3 young men continued to follow Robin, too afraid to confront him. They helped him find their next target, their fear overshadowing their fading loyalty. Their next victim was 20-year-old sex worker Beverly Washington, whom they abducted at gunpoint and subjected to the same horrific fate as their previous victims. When the attack was complete, the crew dumped Beverly in a desolate area off the side of some railroad tracks. Then they returned to Robin's home to complete the rituals, confident they had claimed another life for the Prince of Darkness. However, Beverly, who was left for dead, had an indomitable will to live. She was rescued the day after being spotted by a man who was out early sourcing for recyclables. He noticed that she was still breathing and called the authorities. Only hours after being rescued, she made a miraculous recovery and her condition became stable. The police were shocked by the extent of her injuries, but it wasn't the first time they'd seen such a brutal assault. It was only the latest victim of the murders they'd been tracking over the past year. Thanks to another victim, Angel York, who had also survived an attack back in June, investigators were already familiar with the way the crew operated. They began with an abduction, then escalated and finally ended with gruesome mutilation. Beverly's physical examination showed every indication that she had suffered a similar fate as Angel York, but her doctors weren't sure she'd be able to speak with the police anytime soon. She was still incredibly frail. But it came as a shock to the police when Beverly insisted on sharing what she remembered with them right away. The fact that she wasn't strong did not deter her from helping officers identify the culprits. She painstakingly used blinking and writing slowly on a notepad to give a detailed description of her trauma. Unlike Angel York, Beverly remembered every detail about the grisly night. She filled the notepad with descriptions that helped police build their first composite sketch of the culprit. Beverly described him as a white man with a mustache and greasy brown hair in his mid-20s who wore a flannel shirt and square-toed work boots. However, her most helpful testimony was identifying the red van that was used to abduct her. Beverly wrote that the vehicle had tinted windows and a clip with blue and white feathers hanging from the rearview mirror. She also described a wooden partition which she had been handcuffed to in the back. With these new details, police began searching the city for the red van. Just as officers hit the streets in search of the elusive red van, they received a call about another victim found dead, this time in a cemetery. As they feared, the body, later identified as Lorraine Borowski, bore lacerations similar to Beverly's. Robin likely heard the news while watching TV that evening. It made him nervous, like he could practically feel the police looking over his shoulder. That afternoon, a patrol car spotted a red van that fit Beverly's description driving down the road. The officer pulled the vehicle over and walked cautiously to the window. In the driver's seat was Eddie Spreitzer, who stared nervously at the policeman. When asked if the vehicle was his, he replied that it belonged to his boss. Eddie led the police to Robin's home. Once outside the home, he beckoned his boss outside so the officers could get a good look at his face. Authorities were stunned when Robin walked out of the door. He perfectly fits the description given by Beverly Washington. Robin was arrested, and unlike Eddie, he gave no indication of being a guilty man. He was unflappable and gladly offered to cooperate with authorities. His cool demeanor didn't waver, even after he was taken to the station. Investigators were baffled. He was either completely innocent or was so arrogant that he believed he could get away with anything. 2 days later, Andrew was called in for questioning. Eddie and Andrew confessed to up to 17 murders. Thomas was also arrested, and he admitted to being present at the murders. However, Robin never confessed to any crime. Andrew Kokoralis was found guilty on 2 counts of murder and sentenced to death for his role in the killings. He was tried in 2 separate counties. One was for the murder of a woman called Rose Beck Davis. At the other trial, he tried to take back his confession. Despite this, he was found guilty of the murder of Lorraine Borowski and was, again, sentenced to death. Andrew was executed in 1999. Thomas Kokorales said that he was present at some of the attacks, but he denied taking part in the and murders. Thomas was convicted for his part in the and murder of Lorraine Borowski. He was sentenced to life in prison but was released in 2019 after spending 35 years. Eddie Spreitzer was convicted of the murder and aggravated kidnapping of Linda Sutton. He was sentenced to death, but his sentence was later changed to life without parole. The leader of the cult, Robin Gecht, attempted to avoid going to trial by claiming insanity, but his attempt failed. He was ultimately sentenced to 120 years for and attempted murder of Beverly Washington. Authorities were never able to pin any of the murders on him because they couldn't find any physical evidence. He is the only member of the crew who did not confess. He adamantly denied the charges, and the other members refused to testify against him. Robin Gecht will be eligible for parole in 2042, when he'll be close to 90 years old. What do you think about Robin and his Ripper crew? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. If you enjoy our videos, please support us by hitting the thumbs up and subscribing to our channel for more cult stories like this. And always remember, never drink the Kool-Aid.